All right, very good evening to you, and welcome to another session of Ask the Pastor Bible Study Live. My name is Steve Magua. I am a little bit well rested than I was before. Some of you know that I just came from Montana, where we had a very, very successful, very exciting, very wonderful conference, the Eschatology of Genesis conference in Montana, July 22nd to July 25th. It was amazing. It was epic. But today, I want to begin a series, and I believe that this is going to take a while because I've been thinking about it. And I've realized that this is something that has to be done over and over again. This is something that has to be built upon. So I want to teach on the resurrection. And I want to teach on the resurrection without rushing and without taking 2 or 3 hours at a time, because I think that becomes a little bit overwhelming for some people. So I want to take bite-sized portions of scripture that are talking about the resurrection and expound on them, discuss them, and hopefully get us to a place where we have a better understanding of the doctrine of the resurrection. Greetings to you, my friend David. How are you? My dear friend, Pastor Michael Miano, I see you there. I greet you in the name of the Lord. Would you guys please help me to share this broadcast? I'm hoping to do no more than 25 to 30 minutes at a time, because the doctrine of the resurrection, as Paul says in the book of 1 Corinthians 15, is the centerpiece of the gospel. The resurrection is the linchpin. If you misunderstand the resurrection, you will more than likely misunderstand the gospel. And so I think, and I believe, and I know for a fact that the doctrine of the resurrection is something that we must needs understand very, very intimately. So for today, I want to just define terms. And I want to support my my definitions using the scriptures. I'm going to try and keep this very basic, not extremely technical, but at the very same time, I want to make sure that we can get deeper and deeper as we go. So, the resurrection of Christ as compared with the resurrection on the last day. So, let us first of all establish that the scriptures explicitly, repeatedly teach that Jesus died on the cross, and on the third day he was resurrected from the dead. Let us also establish that Jesus promised, and the Bible promises, the apostles and indeed the Old Testament promises, that on the last day the believers, the saints of God, were going to be raised from the dead. And so, therefore, when we talk about the resurrection, there are 2 words that are used in the New Testament to describe the resurrection. One of them is anastasis, that is to stand up again. That's the Greek word anastasis. The word stasis. And egairo. And they are used interchangeably. So in other words, it's not like one means a different thing from the other. Egairo means to awaken, to arouse from a sleep or from a state of sleeping, but they are both used interchangeably, egairo and anastasis. Now, for instance, in the book of Luke, chapter number 24, this is what we read about the resurrection of Christ Jesus. But on the first day of the week, so Jesus has already been crucified, he's been dead, this is the third day. But on the first day of the week, this is Sunday morning, at early dawn, they went to the tomb, this is the women, taking the spices they had prepared, and they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus Christ. So Jesus was physically missing from the tomb. Jesus was no longer there. When Jesus died, he died physically. They took down his dead body. He was already dead. They took it into the tomb. The women knew where Jesus's dead body was buried. So they went to embalm the body. But when they arrived at the tomb, they found that the body, the dead body of Jesus Christ, was absent, missing, no longer to be found there. While they were perplexed about this, the Bible continues to say, behold, two men stood by them in dazzling apparel, and they were frightened and bowed their faces to the ground. And the men say to them, why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but has risen. The word here is egairo or egathi, which means to arouse from sleep, to awaken. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and on the third day rise. And they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter rose and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves, and he went home marveling at what had happened. So let's establish the first thing here. Jesus died physically, biologically, in a way that could be seen and touched. There was a dead body. But on the first day of the week, which is really the fourth day after Jesus had died, the body is missing. The physical evidence of Jesus's deadness is missing. Some angels, we presume here, because that's what we are told, that there were some men that appeared in glory. We are told that they came and asked them, why are you looking for the living among the dead? In other words, why are you in the tombs? So now, I want to take it to verse number 36. So I want to skip the story of the guys from Emmaus, and I want to just establish the basic things here for today. This is part one. We are going to do this over a period of time. I want to break this down slowly without a big rush. So verse number 36, Luke chapter 24. As they were talking about these things, and I see my good friend G there greeting me. Good evening to you, G. De Leon. Could you help me, G, by posting this on our WhatsApp groups, if you do not mind, just so that I can concentrate on keeping on here. So as they were talking about these things, Jesus himself stood among them, and he said to them, peace to you. So notice, Jesus himself stood, not floated, but stood. The implication here is he is standing on solid ground. He is standing up. And he said to them, peace to you. But they were startled and frightened and thought. So this is their thought. Their first thought was they are seeing a spirit. They are seeing a ghost. They are seeing an apparition. And he said to them, why are you troubled? And why do doubts arise in your hearts? See my hands. See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. So he says, visualize. Use your physical eyes. Secondly, touch me and see. So he says, go beyond seeing, go into the sense of touch. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have. And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. And while they still disbelieved for joy and were marveling, he said to them, have you anything here to eat? They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and he ate it before them. So, what is the teaching here? We are doing this as simply as possible. Jesus rose from the grave biologically. Jesus rose from the grave physically. Jesus had every human function happening in his body. His brain was functioning. His veins were transporting blood. His heart, the thing inside everybody's body, was pumping blood. His lungs were processing oxygen. All the biological processes of a living human being were back in operation in Jesus Christ. So Jesus died physically, Jesus died biologically, Jesus rose physically, biologically. Digestion was still happening inside his stomach. This is why he says, see, touch, give me something to eat. I'm going to eat it. I'm going to consume it. So, I'm a full preterist. I'm a covenant creationist. And I want to assure you that as far as I know, full preterists, covenant creationists also believe that Jesus died physically and Jesus rose physically. Okay, so there is no dispute there. There is no controversy there. Now, question. Did Jesus rise with a different kind of body than he had before he was crucified? Now, I'm going to be developing this over the next few weeks. So for now, I'm just going to give my answer, and I hope that you are patient enough to wait until I get there and I show my scriptures why I'm going to give this answer. Did Jesus have a different type of body? And my answer is an absolute no. No. Jesus had the same exact body that he had died in. And this is what he's demonstrating here. He is not telling them, look, I have a supernatural body. Look, I have a glorified body. You will not find a single verse in the scriptures where Jesus or the apostles claim that Jesus had received another type of body, a glorified body, or any of that sort of thing. Rather, Jesus demonstrates, I have the same type of body. In the book of John, he demonstrates to Thomas, he says, come, touch the wound. The wound is still here. I don't have a supernatural body. I don't have an extraordinary body. I am just the same Jesus that you used to know. And in the coming days, I will show that what Jesus was doing, even in appearing before them, seeming to pass through walls, that was not anything new. Jesus could and did perform miracles beyond physical laws long before. In fact, the very first day he started preaching, in Luke chapter 4, he performed this kind of a miracle where he disappeared and the people could no longer see him. So this has nothing to do with some quality that he received at his resurrection. There is no teaching like that in the scriptures. That is an assumption that people make. Jesus rose up in a physical body. Jesus rose up biologically. He did not receive a new nature at his resurrection. That is my contention, and I will be proving that going forward. But for today, let us agree on this point. And Pastor Michael Miano, I am glad to see you here. And Michael agrees with me. Jesus did not receive a new body. Jesus did not come back with a different body. He rose up with the same exact body that he had and the same exact abilities that he had to perform miracles, to walk on water, to walk through walls. Jesus already had those abilities. Nothing new there. Michael Miano says also, otherwise, touching would have made no point if Jesus had received a different kind of body. Jesus had the same exact body. Now, I also want to define and I want to discuss the resurrection on the last day. Because today I am just introducing the topic. I recognize that if I try to discuss everything that I believe, everything that I know, everything that there is in the scriptures about this topic, it would take many, many hours. I believe it would take more than 10 hours. Therefore, I'm not going to try and do that. I am going to be self-aware. I'm going to be self-aware that I'm Steve Magua, and as Steve Magua, I am always tempted to keep going and to do a 2-hour video, a 3-hour video, a 4-hour video. I am not going to do that today. I'm going to be cutting this into short sections so that the believers, because I have noticed that believers are really struggling with this. Even those who come into full preterism, they really struggle with this. They can see all the time texts point to the resurrection being in the first century, but they can't wrap their minds around it. And it is my job as a pastor, it is my job as a teacher to try and help people to understand this. So understand my goal, understand my perspective here and what I'm trying to achieve. Now, G wants us to go for 3 hours. We will not yield to the temptation. And G, I know you'll take this as a joke. Get thee behind me, G. De Leon. I'm not going to do 3 hours. And I know that you take that as a joke. I am not calling you Satan because I know people get all twisted up. Now, after these things, he appeared in another form to them as they were walking into the country. Yes, Mark 6:32. Is that 6:32 or 16:12? Mark 16:12. Yes. So Jesus had the ability to transform. G. Right? Transfiguration happened before the resurrection. Jesus had the ability to transform. So Jesus could appear in any form that he desired before his crucifixion and after his crucifixion. Nothing changed about that. So when people see that and they say, oh, but Jesus, no, he could transform. At the transfiguration, he transformed. He had not yet died. The fact that he could pass through people in Luke chapter 4, that already tells you he could take any form. He is God. He created nature. He is able to transcend above nature. He's able to walk on water. He did. He was able to perform such miracles. That is not something that he received as a result of his resurrection. There is nothing in the scriptures that says that. You would have to make that assumption. You would have to make that speculation. But you would have to ignore all the other times that he did extraordinary miracles outside of nature. Or you'd just have to deny miracles altogether. Now, the resurrection of the last day. Remember, this is introductory. Now, so Jesus resurrected physically. Did Jesus promise and did the apostles promise that people would be resurrected physically in the same way as Jesus was resurrected physically, biologically? And the answer to that is absolutely not. There is not a single verse that I know of, and I'm not claiming I know every verse and I understand all things, but I do not know of a single verse that promises a biological, physical resurrection similar, totally equal to that of Christ. So let me show a couple verses here. Number one, I want to show the verses about the last day. John chapter 6. In John chapter 6, this is what Jesus taught. From verse 36, he says, but I said to you, talking to the Jews, that you have seen me and yet do not believe. All that the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never cast out. For I have come down from heaven, not to do my own will, but the will of him who sent me. And this is the will of him who sent me, that I should lose nothing of all that he has given me, but raise it up. But raise it up on the last day. So God's will was that Jesus should raise all that he has given him, and it is raise it up. Now notice it as I say raise them up, he says raise it up. For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who looks on the Son and believes in him should have eternal life, and I will raise him up on the last day. So Jesus is quite explicitly promising that there would be a resurrection on a specific day of time called the last day. Jesus promises there would be a resurrection of believers. So let's establish who it is. He says whoever believes in him was going to obtain eternal life, and he would be raised on the last day. Whoever believed in him would receive eternal life and would be raised on the last day. Everyone who looked on the Son and believed in him would be raised on the last day. So I want to establish the basics that the promise of the resurrection is quite explicit. So again, there is no denial in Christianity, in any group that I know that is considered to be true Christian. I know as a full preterist, we do not deny the resurrection of the saints. We do not deny the resurrection on the last day. In fact, we affirm that the Bible teaches that there was to be a resurrection. Now, there are many, many resurrection texts. I will not be able to get into all of them today. Now, let's talk about the nature of the resurrection on the last day. The nature of the resurrection on the last day. Now, in order to get there, we need to define the last day. We need to define the last day. The last day of what? Because I think that point, understanding what the last day is, will help you to understand the nature of the resurrection. Notice that I've already said, let me state it clearly. I do not believe that the Bible is teaching that believers were going to be resurrected in the same fashion as Christ was resurrected when he was resurrected on the third day. The believers were going to be resurrected in another form other than that which Christ was resurrected in on the last day. So what is the last day? There are many options of what the last day could be. The last day could be the last day of time. So let me give you a couple options. Option A, the last day of time. B, the last day of the universe, which would kind of be the same in that concept, right? So the universe comes to an end, and that's the last day of physical life. There is only one last day. There are not many last days. There is only one last day. So either it is a physical last day, which pertains to the end of time or to the end of the physical world, the end of history, as many futurists put it, or it is the end of a covenantal order. So I don't want to complicate it too much. It is either the end of the physical realm, the physical time, the physical history, or it is the end of the covenantal order. I want to propose to you, and I will be proving this over the next few weeks, over the next few sessions, over the next few days, that the last day that Jesus is speaking about is not the end of time. The last day that Jesus is speaking about is not the end of the physical universe. The last day that Jesus is speaking about is not the end of history. Rather, it is the end of the old covenant order. And since this is extremely important, allow me to prove that before I come to the end of this video. So the resurrection is on the last day, and it's not the last day of time. It is not the last day of history. It is not the last day of the physical universe. It is the last day of the old covenant of Israel. Run with me, if you will, in order to understand this last day, into the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter number 12. Would you please? Daniel chapter number 12. I'm trying to finish within the next 5 minutes. If I miss it by 2 or 3 minutes, I think it will be okay. So Daniel chapter 12. Read with me, if you will. At that time shall arise Michael, the great prince who has charge of your people, and there shall be a time. There shall be a time. So notice how time comes into play here. There shall be a time of trouble, such as has never been since there was a nation till that time. Notice time has already been mentioned 3 times. So at that time, Michael shall arise, the great prince who has charge of your people. Please notice that your people here is the people of Daniel, Israel. There will be a time of trouble for Israel. It is called Jacob's trouble. And it will be such a time for that nation of Israel, different or more horrendous than at any other time. But at that time, your people, that is Israel, the people of Daniel, your people is always the people of Daniel, shall be delivered, that is saved. All Israel shall be saved. This is parallel to what Paul says in Romans 11. All Israel shall be saved. Everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth. So notice here that the subject of who is in view never changes. So the many who sleep in the dust are not Aztecs or Americans or Australians. The many here are a subset of the ones that are already in view. Your people, many of your people who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Many of those who sleep in the dust shall awake. And here is the resurrection. Some to everlasting life. Notice that in John 6 says, whoever looks on the Son, believes in him, should have eternal life. And I will raise him, I will awaken him on the last day. Daniel says, many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. A gyro. Some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. And then Daniel is given that injunction. Daniel, shut up the words, seal the book until the time of the end. I want to propose to you that the last day in John chapter 6 is this day that Daniel is describing. Would you all agree with that? Is there anyone who is watching would say, no, that's a different event? If so, please put it in the comment section. I will deal with it later. But if you do agree, please put there, yes, clearly Jesus and Daniel are speaking about the same event. The resurrection of the just and the unjust. Now, assuming that we are in agreement so far, notice that the resurrection here that is being discussed, at least with Daniel, is being limited to Daniel's people. Now, that is not to say that we will not find other scriptures that will tell us other people all over the planet may be involved. I'm not saying we will not, but I'm saying right now the text that we are looking at is telling us it is Daniel's people who are subject to the resurrection. They're the ones being raised from the dead, the just and the unjust. Now, continuing as long as we are together. Now, remember, if you have questions, please ask them in the comment section. I may not answer them today. I will make them as the subject of the next video. Now, we are 29 minutes, so I'm almost there. So then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, 2 others stood, one on this bank of the stream, one on the other bank of the stream. And someone said to the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the stream, how long shall it be till the end of these wonders? In other words, and I hope we can agree about this, he is asking, when will the last day be? Remember, I'm trying to establish the resurrection of the saints is not in the same fashion as the resurrection of Christ. In other words, the resurrection of Christ was biological and physical. The resurrection of the saints was going to be something even more glorious than the resurrection of Christ, if that does not sound like blasphemy to you. The resurrection of Christ was a type. The resurrection of Christ was a sign. Christ came to fulfill the law and the prophets in order to establish the new covenant, the new heavens and the new earth. The new heavens and the new earth are greater than the first heavens and the first earth. And whatever Jesus was doing in the first heavens and the first earth was a type of what was to happen at his second coming. That's why he said his resurrection was going to be a sign for that generation. A sign is a token. A sign is a banner pointing to something greater than itself. Now, watch this. So one of those angels, I believe they are angels, says, how long shall it be till the last day? How long shall it be till the end? Because the end has to be the last day. And I heard the man clothed in linen who was above the waters of the stream. He raised his right hand and his left hand toward heaven and swore by him who lives forever that it would be for a time, times and half a time. So in other words, he specifies that this whole period in which there is a great tribulation, there is a great deliverance, and that there is a great resurrection was going to take place within a period of 1 time, 2 times, and half a time, totaling to 3.5 times. For reference, for those who want to study deeper, you can go to Revelation chapter 12. That expression is used there again, and it always refers to the 1260 or 1290 days, the 42 months, the 3.5 years. So in other words, the whole process of great tribulation, great deliverance, great resurrection was going to take place within 3.5 years, 42 months, 1260 days or 1290 days, depending on the leap year. Now, so, and additionally to that timing, so he's given the timing of the whole event, and that when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things would be finished. So the last day would be marked by the shattering of the power of the holy people. Let's continue so that I can hopefully come to an end here shortly. I heard, but I did not understand. Then I said, oh my Lord, what shall be the outcome of these things? He said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed until the time of the end, not the end of time, but the time of the end. Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall act wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand. Verse 11. And from the time, because we are looking at what does the last day mean, I am contending, I am proposing, I am emphatically saying that the last day is not the end of time. I am emphatically saying that the last day is not the end of the universe. It is not the end of the planet. It is not the end of history. It is the end of the old covenant order. That is what I've already contended. I am about to prove that. And then that will be it for today. Now watch this. And from the time that the regular burnt offering, old covenant animal offerings, and from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up. So 2 things happen. The regular burnt offering is taken away. The abomination that makes desolate is set up. From that moment, from that time, there shall be 1,290 days, which is exactly equal to time times and half a time that we find here. It would be for time times and half a time is the same time here, 1290 days. Now, here is my point. The resurrection, according to this text, which I hope you agree with me that Jesus and Daniel are speaking about the same event, the resurrection would take place 3.5 years, 42 months, 1290 days max after the end of the animal sacrificial system and the establishment of the abomination of desolation. That's when the resurrection would take place. That is my teaching. That is my emphasis here. I want you to see, and I hope that, and I'm going to try and move as slow as I have to. I'm not going to rush into this. The resurrection of the last day, we are told that the end would take place based on a couple of things. Number one, in verse number 7, we are told that it will take time, a time, 2 times, and half a time, 1209 days. And also the other marker of this resurrection, because the question was asked, how long shall these wonders take until they end? How shall we know the last day has arrived? Notice that the answer is not given when time ends, when the universe ends, when the planet is no more. That's not the answer that is given. The answer that is given is tied to Old Covenant sacrificial system. So he says 2 things. He says, number one, when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end. In other words, the destruction of Old Covenant law, the destruction of the temple, because the power of sin is the law. The law was housed and headquartered and operated from the temple. Therefore, even Jesus, when he begins to answer the questions, or even to begin to prophesy in Matthew 24 in the Olivet Discourse, he begins with the destruction of the temple. They come to him, they say, tell us, what do you think about this temple, Jesus? This is the center of the law. This is where God said that he dwells. This is where he meets his people. This is where he forgives their sins. Jesus said, do you see all this? Not a single stone will remain on top of another. All this will be poof, gone. Jesus places the temple at the center of his second coming text in Matthew 24. Daniel places the destruction of the system of law, the Old Covenant system, at the center of the resurrection. So watch this. He says, when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end. In other words, when Jerusalem is completely in ruins, when the temple is no more, when the priesthood is dissolved, when the animal sacrifices are gone forever, then all these things will be finished. The resurrection will be finished. 3.5 years, 1209 days. And this is confirmed because Daniel says, I don't understand. Please give me more. So he says, oh Lord, I do not understand. Give me more. So he says, you go your way, Daniel. This will not happen until a long time from here, which obviously was in the time of Jesus. He says here, and from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, you can count 1,290 days, 3.5 years. Brothers and sisters, that determines the nature of the resurrection. Because the nature of the resurrection is not predicated on the end of history or the end of the physical universe or the end of time. It is predicated on the end of the sacrificial system. I have a question for you. Is the sacrificial system still awaiting to come to an end? Are we still waiting for the regular burnt offerings to come to an end? Because if the resurrection is still in our future, now I'm talking about timing right here. I'm not yet going to the issue of nature. If the resurrection is still in our future, as most Christians believe, speculate erroneously, I must insist, then the regular burnt offerings are continuing, because the resurrection will never happen until 2 things happen. Number one, the regular burnt offering is taken away. Number 2, the abomination that causes desolation is set up. I want to contend with you tonight that the abomination that causes desolation, according to Jesus in Matthew 24, which I will deal with in the next video, took place within 40 years inside the holy place of the temple in Jerusalem, from the time that Jesus gave Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 13. Therefore, within 1290 days from when the abomination of desolation was set up, according to Jesus' own prophecy, the resurrection took place. Therefore, I contend And I emphatically put before you that the resurrection is in our past. The resurrection of the last day was the last day of the old covenant sacrificial system. The last day is in our past. The last day is not in our future. Which brings me to the end of today's or this session's teaching. I know it leaves many more questions unanswered, but I want it to be so that you can go think about it. You can write your questions so that now your questions, because I'm here to teach you and I'm here to open up things so that you can understand them. I don't want just to spew all that I know. I want it to be an interactive process. I want to respond to your questions. I want the subject and the content of what I'm going to be teaching to be based on, oh, okay, if that is so, then what about this? If that is so, because that's how you get to learn. This is how you get to interact with the material until you either come to the conclusion that I come up to and believe them, or you can say, oh, this guy is totally out of his mind. He's crazy. He's confused. He's bamboozled. He has joined some cult. The last day that Jesus promised that he would raise people up from the dead was the last day of the old covenant order, which took place in AD 70 when the temple was destroyed, the Levitical priesthood was dissolved, the whole sacrificial system was brought to an end once and for all. And for the last 2,000 years, 1970 years to be exact, to be more exact rather, none of that is there. It's not coming in our future. It will never come because the resurrection is in our past. That brings us to the end of part 1. When I come back, I will begin to examine the nature of Christ's resurrection versus the nature of the believer's resurrection. Hopefully this has been a blessing. I know I promised to be under 30 minutes. I've gone 12 minutes over. So G, you'll have to bear with me. God bless you all.